Alright, I know it's getting a little uncanny now. How many glowingly positive videos in a row is this? Well, let's just clear one thing first. The Payday 2 situation with the Epic Games crossplay and Update 237 is still not completely resolved, and until it is, I'm going to keep mentioning it. I absolutely refuse to forget one of the game's most detrimental updates until we have a complete matchmaking fix, and whilst I still think there will be one, when it comes to making an informed decision on anything that involves the purchase of a good, I think it's important that you come in armed with all the facts. That said, I also believe that it's my job to evaluate any content released for Payday 2 as objectively as possible, to not do a disservice to the people who created it. Regardless of Payday 2's current issues, Crude Awakening's designers, technical developers, composer, and voice actors all deserve to have their work reviewed independently, which is how I've approached this update, and wow, Payday 2's likely final ever heist and DLC is immense. It's the fitting send-off and tribute to the Payday gang after all these years we've been hoping for, and I desperately wish it wasn't in any way marred by the recent controversy surrounding the game. In many ways, I believe Crude Awakening is a better finale for Payday 2 than the White House ever was, and I'm not even a White House hater. Crude Awakening is just a bit special in how it takes on board all the lessons learned both across Payday 3's development and especially during the revival era of Payday 2, and has come out the other end as an absolute masterpiece. And now I've got to go ahead and qualify that insanely bold statement, so strap in, I have a hell of a lot to say about this heist. As with every heist released since 2018, this is a one-day, full pre-planning, stealth and loud heist that falls into the medium-length category. Immediately, you'll see that it stands out aesthetically with its oil rig setting and really impressive scope. A fair chunk of this rig is fully explorable, and despite that, the heist performs really well in my experience. There is a loud specific approach that will cost you 6 favors and drop you straight in for a cinematic skydive that will have you landing on the top deck with the alarm already blaring. I love this conceptually, but damn if I wouldn't rather see it playing out in Payday 3. Poor old Payday 2 just struggles to make these sorts of large scope set pieces look good and convincing. Also, I'd say objectively this is a waste of 6 favors. It might save about 20 seconds when compared to the alternative, but there's no real benefit of going loud immediately. This asset could be favourably balanced if it dropped you down with some additional resources, but as it stands it should either be free or only purchased to get that feeling of skydiving in Diesel one last time. Either way, the other approach is just as interesting, as you'll have to sail your way over to the rig, ziplining your way to the upper levels to proceed without your cover blown. Other assets include the usual suspects, alongside some to speed up objectives and add additional loot to the heist. The oil rig is also split into 2 bridge paths, which is very relevant to the escape, and you can choose between which you want to take for free. I found the south bridge made the escape just a bit less frantic. I'll walk you through the loud approach first, although keep in mind there are a fair few similarities between objectives regardless of your playstyle. After landing on the rig, the first thing you need to do is access the server room, which is a fairly lengthy drill objective if you don't bring along a breaching tool or locate the sieve carrying a keycard. Once inside though, you simply need to destroy a server and override security for access to the interior sections of the heist. There's a USB stick required for this, which spawns in a container with a few fixed locations. Sadly, this is another one of those get told to find something vague and then eventually we'll just point it out to you directly objectives, which I've never been a fan of, but at least once you've played the heist, you'll learn you can actually seek this thing out as soon as you reach the rig, as, similar to Hostile Takeover, many objectives can be completed out of order. Another objective you can prioritize immediately whilst drilling the server door is the testing of the oil sample's purity. This is a great example of Payday 2's more logical approach to heisting in recent years, as whilst I spent a while on my first attempt, testing all samples until finding the right one, on a future run I noticed the chart which actually details which of the 3 color-coded containers are carrying the purest oil. Finding all this is just step 1 of the heist though. Next you'll need to head along to either the north or south bridge and reach the oil processing area. This is where you're going to siphon off the rig's pure oil stores, making this one of the wildest commodity heists the Payday gang has ever gone after. It already stands out as unique, but here is also where you'll locate the Payday objective to end all Payday objectives, the pipe minigame. This one's either going to leave you rejoicing the innovative design or pulling out your hair, hell, maybe even a bit of both. Personally, I love it. It's such a clever and puzzly objective that really stands out even with 87 other heists in the game, forcing you to engage with your environment so much more than I'm used to in Payday 2. It works well either during a gunfight or whilst attempting to juggle guards in stealth, demanding enough of your attention to keep things interesting without simply turning into another sit and wait style objective. Personally, I found it easier to pick a route from the target tanker itself and work backwards towards the transfer pump, striking off the dead ends until all possibilities had been attempted. Let me tell you though, it ain't that easy on death sentence, when cops seem to have a shot on you from every angle. For reference, I spent upwards of 10 minutes working this one out the first time I made it. After you finally get the oil successfully flowing though, you just need to defend the 2 points of interest for a short time before heading down to the drilling tower and dealing with Gabriel Santiago, Esteban's brother, from all the way back in Midland Ranch. Whilst this rivalry didn't have a lot of build up to it, I'd say it is probably the best outright boss fight in Payday 2. Gabriel has a really cool look, wields a massive KSP LMG, can even tase you with his melee attacks, and is mostly impervious to damage thanks to his armoured hazmat suit. The only way around this is to pour out some oil, bait him to follow you into it, and set the whole thing ablaze, making him vulnerable for the duration of the burn effect. I still find boss fights a little clunky. They generally reward high DPS crit builds and can be extra awkward for non-healing perk decks to deal with, but the uniqueness of this one, coupled with the fact that additional SWAT spawns are quite limited during this section, does enough to give this heist a final kick as we keep up the boss fight tradition of the campaign finales. Once he's dead, you can access the drill controls to build up enough pressure by turning a few specific valves so that the oil rig essentially commits Sudoku and starts to explode just gently enough that the gang still has time to secure Santiago's key code for a little extra loot, which can simply be thrown off the rig and picked up later via the speedboat, which is an excellent and surprising addition. As for the escape itself, the rig self-destructing is intense and visually impressive. Coupled with an endless assault, fixed dozer spawns and plenty of decisions to make on what route to take, this is a really fun section. Eventually, you'll make it back to the zipline and can hop back aboard the boat to flee the blast radius before the entire thing goes up in smoke, completing the final heist. Stealth offers a similar initial experience, although it's worth noting at this point that all the map security on this heist uses a unique Bellmead model, which is another wonderful detail. The server, USB, and oil purity objectives are functionally identical as in Loud though, as is the pipe turning minigame, although the map design goes quite a long way here to benefit and support stealth players, giving you plenty of high and low traversal options to get this done. I found it a lot less stressful in Stealth than on Death Sentence Loud, and here's also where you can find and take out the camera operator. From there, things differ slightly as you have to get creative in how you assassinate Gabriel, finding the power supply to his laser alarms, as it's heavily implied the guy is paranoid about the Payday gang, with good reason, as you just have to shove a crowbar into his office's ventilation fan and pump some sample fumes into the locked room, taking him out nice and slowly. I actually found these objectives to be well designed, despite still using the patented don't show or tell Payday 2 method, as the power room was well illuminated, and the fan has this distinct green light to highlight it as a point of interest, straight from the Dark Souls toolbook of level design. Once he's dead and buried and the pressure's building, as in Loud, you just have to turn the oil drill against itself and flee, exactly as you would otherwise. Things immediately go loud, a la Big Oil at this point, although I found no cops had actually spawned by the time I made it to the escape boat with my Yakuza build, and fortunately, you'll still get the stealth bonus for completion. So that's the heist rundown, but what you haven't seen or importantly heard are the little things that really set it apart. I for one thought the rig's visual design and layout was excellent. I love the way the catwalks, officers and labs all connect so cleanly together, and found cop spawns to be uncharacteristically fair and logical. The variety of environments in this heist is impressive considering it takes place on a single rig, with tight interior sections that flow into corridor shooter style pathways, all the way up to the upper floor that feels like some sort of combat arena, and finally the actual drill room which has some intimidating scale to it. Everything about the mission feels so unique, and it's actually quite a natural setting for a Payday heist. In places, the scope of what the devs are attempting with Crude Awakening is stretched a little thin by the limitations of Payday 2's diesel engine, but it was always able to recover from these sections that fall slightly flat, with others that really took me by surprise. There's a very heavy atmosphere on this heist. You can hear Santiago's fear over the intercom, the civs talk about being trapped on the rig, and the patrol chopper adds another environmental detail that caught me completely off guard. This palpable fear and respect is a culmination of what the Payday gang has become over the 10 years of Payday 2, and somehow, despite the narrative moving sideways for 5 years, this felt like a fitting end and true transition into Payday 3. And whilst I don't love the stealth and loud similarities, dare I say it, as it's fresh in my mind, the heist actually has shades of Payday 3 in terms of its approach to hybrid stealth and multi-layered objectives. High concealment crit builds have an advantage, as they can quite easily maintain stealth through the first portion of the heist, only breaking and going loud when things get a bit more open at the pipe puzzle. This is a positive and a negative, as it effectively shortens and simplifies the heist as a loud experience, akin to Hostile Takeover, but also varies the gameplay nicely and felt like a successful experiment to me. I found the objectives to be exceptionally engaging, especially the pipe puzzle, and the more action-orientated escape, even after stealth, is exactly the high-octane send-off Payday 2 needed, compared to the White House's low-key pardon escape. Even this late into Payday 2's lifespan, it's excellent to see some continued innovation, and I was actually surprised by how nicely the Texas Heat narrative of Sarah Industries was tied off by this one, using environmental storytelling to link everything together. One thing I do have to say though is this heist is very easy. I first timed it in stealth using only a couple of pages, and even in loud, I've not struggled to beat death sentence once. In fact, my only failure was a timeout when I was going for the cash liquidation achievement. Stealth can be excused somewhat as it's massively aided by the setting, being incredibly easy to dispose of body bags over the side of the rig. However, I also don't think the difficulty is distributed very evenly throughout the heist in loud, as most close quarter sections are exceptionally easy, but I found there to be huge difficulty spikes later, first during the pipe turning objective, second when fighting Gabriel Santiago, and finally on the escape, where you either need to go ultra fast or have an excellent multi-killing tool, as the spawns, at least on the North Bridge, can get a little crazy. This might be a frustration for some, although I found that a sniper build with Greys was optimal for this heist, as there are many great sightlines and spawn killing locations. Just pack crits and an SMG for the boss fight, and you should have this one in the bag in under 20 minutes. But there's still a part of me that can appreciate the comparative ease of this one, as I think it's a heist that should be experienced by all Payday players. You see, Crude Awakening did something to me no other heist ever has. I actually filled up at this one, and that's down to one huge factor I haven't mentioned yet: the music. If anyone at all had concerns regarding Gustavo's credentials as the composer for Payday 3, I implore you, listen to On the Road. This heist track has skyrocketed to my top 3 of all time. Not only is it a magnificent orchestrally performed song which incorporates more instrumentation than ever before, it fits the tone of a final heist perfectly, even whilst keeping its country motifs. And that's not all. It's the first Payday track in years to include a vocal variation that will play seemingly at random during assaults. This is a powerful heist, and when everything comes together, the music hits a crescendo as you race through the catwalks, flanked by your brothers and sisters in arms, speeding away only to gaze back at the vast destruction you've caused. That's when you'll feel it. The end of an era. The end of Payday 2, and what an era it was. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the song. I'll see you all very soon.
With fame and fortune, triumph and glory, and pain and torture. 10 years of mayhem, some dressed in suits. So much we did, so much we'd said. On you.
huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.